Hi, and welcome to another episode of Meet the Author. Today we have Robert Steele. Robert Steele is the vice chairman of an international retail marketing agency and has been director of numerous companies. A graduate of Amherst College and Columbia University, he served in the CIA and Congress and was a candidate for governor of Connecticut. He lives with his wife in Essex, Connecticut, and he wrote the book, The Curse. Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm just going to read about the book, and then we'll ask you all the questions and about the book. During the 1990s, two Connecticut Indian tribes built the world's two biggest gambling casinos in southeastern corner of the state, resulting in what has been termed a gambling Chernobyl. The Curse is a novel set against those events. It begins in 1637 with the massacre of the Pequot Indians and a curse delivered by a Pequot sachem to the young English soldier who was about to kill him. The story then jumps 350 years as the soldier's 13th generation descendant, Josh Williams, becomes embroiled in a battle to stop a newly minted Indian tribe from building a third casino that threatens his town and ancestral home. The lure of easy money drives everyone from the tribe's chief to a shadowy Miami billionaire, venal politicians, and Providence mobsters, while a small quintessential New England town must choose between preserving its character or accepting an extraordinary proposal that will change it forever. As the battle over the casino reaches a climax, Josh discovers startling truths about his family's past, including centuries-old events that appear to be impacting the present with devastating effects. Now, I must say, I read this book and I loved it, and it's very well written. So my first question to Robert Steele is, how did you get to write such a high-class novel that, by the way, I'm going to even say in the beginning of the show, I think this should be required reading in many literature classes and in colleges.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. I served in Congress representing Eastern Connecticut from 1970 through the end of 1974. And I then ran for governor, unsuccessfully, of Connecticut.
Against Ella Grasso.
Against Ella Grasso. And after that, I left politics, and my family, my wife and our 4 children and I, moved from Vernon, where we had lived for a decade, to Ledyard. And we lived for the next 21 years literally on the edge of the Mashantucket Pequot Reservation. And those two experiences, knowing the political backdrop of Eastern Connecticut as I did, and knowing the players, so to speak, and then living in the midst of this enormous casino gambling explosion, which changed the whole region so dramatically, really gave me the equivalent of a front row seat for watching the political maneuverings that led to the casinos and then seeing firsthand their impact.
And I just want to mention that even though the show is seen worldwide through the internet, we are in Wethersfield, Connecticut, and Robert Steele was born in Wethersfield, Connecticut, which is a historical American town. And we were talking about how the history of Wethersfield impacted him in writing a book about history and politics and political science. Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and who your father was and your relationship to Wethersfield?
Well, my dad, first of all, was a radio morning personality on WTIC for 61 years. He's in the Radio Hall of Fame in Chicago and had a great influence on me in many ways. But I did grow up in Wethersfield, and I played Little League Baseball probably less than a mile from where the great battle in this book takes place. And once we moved to Ledyard, and I began to develop an interest in what was happening in the Mashantucket Pequot tribe and the Mohegans and the casinos and their impact on Connecticut, it occurred to me that really my interest in this subject went all the way back to elementary school in Wethersfield, where everybody knew about the Pequot War and the massacre that the English colonial settlers in 1637.
In Mystic?
No, it was actually in Wethersfield. Actually happened in Old Wethersfield, and then in retaliation, the English colonists, the Puritan colonists, attacked the Pequots in Mystic. So there were really two massacres. The one in Wethersfield was only involved about 9 people, but I say only, there was a lot of people for those who were massacred. And the one in Mystic, however, was an enormous massacre and tragedy. Over 500 Pequots, men, women, and children, were killed in the attack.
I'd like you to read a part about the Indian Wars. And by the way, reading this, is there any relationship between these Indian Wars with the French and Indian Wars that happened later on, about 100 years later?
Not really. There's a connection in that, unfortunately, this war, the Pequot War, was one of the most important events in early American colonial history because it led to English domination of southern New England. And it also, unfortunately, set the tone for much of the relationships between American colonists and Indian tribes. So in that respect, certainly it had a relationship, although it is a complex relationship. But they certainly were not the same wars. They were very different wars.
But the Mohegans were involved in the French and Indian Wars. Last of the Mohegans.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because actually that book, The Last of the Mohegans, while it talks about the Mohegans, they are not these Mohegans.
Okay. A different area of the country. Okay. Iroquois.
Yeah, you asked me to...
So read it. I mean, this is a very well-written book. I just loved it.
Well, let me start with the very beginning, which is Mystic, May 25th to 26th, 1637. And it begins, the combined English and Indian army trudged steadily through the southern New England woods, heading west toward Pequot country. There were 77 English soldiers in all, led by Captain John Mason and accompanied by 70 Mohegans and more than 400 Narragansetts. Their target was the newly fortified Pequot village at Winchaux, near present-day New London, where the Pequot's grand sachem Sassacus was believed to be, along with some 600 warriors. As far as the battle is concerned, you asked me to read a little bit about the battle.
Let's get some action.
You want some action?
Yeah.
With that, Mason headed back into the wigwam where he'd nearly been killed and brought out a firebrand that he put to the roof mats, igniting them instantly. Carried by swirling embers, the fire spread quickly, leaping from one wigwam to the next. Seeing the flames, Underhill lit his own fire on the other side of the fort with the train of powder. And as the two fires raced toward one another, Pequot men, women, and children fled their burning huts, screaming above the musket fire. Confusion turned to panic as whole groups of Indians fled one way, only to run directly into the line of soldiers, from whom they wheeled in terror and headed back the other way, in some cases running directly into the flames they were trying to escape. Ethan watched one young Pequot turn and attempt to loose an arrow at its pursuers, but the fire burned the bowstring before he could get off the shot. Within minutes, the stench of burning flesh was everywhere.
I mean, burned the bowstring. I mean, wow. That is really, who would ever think of that? It's fantastic.
Well, that actually happened in history, according to the account by Captain Mason. So presumably it's a true story.
So you did your research.
I did the research, yeah.
So this book is about how the casinos affect Connecticut, how they affected Connecticut, and what the future of gaming in the country. And that's what you talk about in the book, even though it's a novel. So can you tell us, and now my feeling is that you're the person to write the book because you have a political background, but also a background in English and a background in a way in the military, and in also business. And you also lived in the area that all this is taking place. So you have all the tools to write this novel. Can you tell us a little bit about the message the book is trying to tell us?
Well, I wanted to tell the story. I want to tell it for my children. I want to tell it for people in Connecticut, and I want to tell it for people around the country in a way that it would get to a different audience than a nonfiction book. So as I lived in Ledyard and I saw this all developing, it occurred to me that I was living through, personally, one of the most remarkable events and historically connected events in the history of New England. And I thought it was a story that would make a remarkable novel, if I could write it. And secondly, it would give me a chance to tell the factual background of what happened in southeastern Connecticut and talk about the impact of this explosion of casino gambling on American culture.
Now, from your perspective, is casino gambling or gaming, is that all bad, or they're good, or it's mixed? What's your view? Good, bad, in between?
Well, no, I don't think it's all bad. I think in Connecticut, for example, the casinos have been spectacular business successes. They've created, at their peak, some 20,000 casino jobs. They attracted over half their customers from out of state, and they have sent hundreds of millions of dollars to the state treasury in Hartford. On the downside, however, the casinos have created a pervasive gambling culture in southeastern Connecticut. They've sharply skewed our economy there toward low-paying service jobs, which seem to be getting more low-paying all the time. And they've resulted in a sharp spike in the number of pathological and problem gamblers. One of the most remarkable findings from a 2009 State of Connecticut sponsored study was that since Foxwoods opened in 1992, the study was done in 2007 to 2009, there had been a 400% increase in the number of arrests for embezzlement in Connecticut, a rate of increase over 10 times the national average, a rate of increase of about 400% over 10 times the national average. One of the embezzlers, incidentally, was my tax collector in Ledyard.
Wow.
She stole $302,000 from tax receipts. I never knew whether my tax receipts were among them or not, in order to play the slots at Foxwoods. And, of course, she didn't win.
Wow. So the embezzlement is related to people wanting to find the money to gamble.
That's right.
Sort of like somebody who's stealing to pay for drugs.
That's exactly right. And in fact, the number of arrests for embezzlement in southeastern Connecticut became so great that the New London Day, the largest newspaper in southeastern Connecticut, described southeastern Connecticut as the embezzlement capital of America.
Really? What about other places in the country where there are casinos, like Las Vegas?
Well, no one evidently equaled that as far as per capita is concerned, according to the story.
Oh, okay.
But embezzlement is a problem. There's no question about it, because exactly for the reason you described, and that is people run out of money looking for new sources of money, and one of the most obvious places is right where they work, because there's money there.
So I'm going to read another part, if you allow me. I'll read this part, page 216 that we talked about, because I thought it was really really well written. The problem started, she said, when she went to Foxwoods alone on a Friday night and then began to go there regularly on Friday nights just to relax and have something to look forward to at the end of the week. I thought it was really a good outlet for me, Marge said. The casino's bright and alive and cheerful. The employees are friendly. They bring you free wine, and you can even earn points for playing. Not only that, but it's safe, because they have all that security. Josh nodded, picturing the setting. The big thing, though, Marge continued, was that I really enjoyed the slots. I don't have a family, and the truth is, all I really do is work. Everybody depends on me. Mr. Duncan basically had me running the agency, and since you bought it, the pace has gotten just that much faster. I found that when I played the machines, I could forget about everything. It, puts you in a trance. where you don't have to think and no one's constantly calling your name and asking you to do something. How's that? That was really good. Okay.
Unfortunately, all too true. Incidentally, one of the biggest categories of slots players has become women for exactly that reason. They like the ability to gamble in isolation. They like the ability to gamble anonymously. They like to be able to lose themselves. And as that passage suggests, they like the security because the casino is safe, at least until you leave it.
Oh, okay. What has the reaction been to the book so far? What have you have toured with the book? You gave talks in libraries. Where did you give talks?
I've spoken now at about 140 different libraries, civic groups, historical societies, some colleges, and I'm currently still in the midst of my author's tour of southern New England.
Wow. So what has been the reaction?
Well, the reaction has been that there's an enormous amount of interest in the book. I spent a lot of this time in Massachusetts, actually in the last 6 months, which is the scene of really some of the great battles between casino opponents and casino supporters. Massachusetts has approved the building of 3 new casinos and a major slots parlor in the state. But that is all being fought out on a town-by-town basis, and that each host town where a casino has been proposed must actually vote. So far...
was that the case in Connecticut?
No, it was not the case in Connecticut. That's a good story. We in Connecticut never had any say. Because of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act that was passed back in 1988, and this is the 25th anniversary of that act, these casinos were actually imposed upon us in Connecticut. The act said that a federally recognized Indian tribe had the right to build a casino on its reservation if the state in which the casino, the tribe resided, allowed any kind of casino-type gambling. And Connecticut allowed it for charity purposes, and as a result, the 2 tribes were able to open their casinos in 1992 and 1996.
So that brings up a question: are the Indian territories autonomous areas in the country? What is their legal standing?
Yes, they are.
Are they a state within a
federally
state?
recognized Indian tribe is able to take its reservation into federal trust. So the government holds the land in federal trust. And any tribe, any federally recognized tribe is tantamount to a semi-autonomous nation with a direct treaty-to-treaty, government-to-government relationship with the United States. So it is immune to most local laws. It doesn't pay property taxes, for example. It doesn't pay state taxes. It must collect sales taxes, but the tribal enterprises do not have to pay most taxes. They are not subject to building codes or to environmental laws. Or to labor laws and a number of other state and local laws.
And in view of Foxwoods and Mohegan's Sun's declining revenues and growing competition from casinos in other states, where do Connecticut's casinos go from here?
Yeah, well, that's the big question now, because the casinos, as I say, have been in many ways spectacularly successful. At their peak, they were sending collectively $430 million to the state treasury in Hartford. But the dynamics of the casino business across the country have now changed. We now have, back in 1988 when this Indian Gaming Act was passed, there were only 2 states that allowed casinos. Nevada, obviously, with Las Vegas, and New Jersey with Atlantic City. Today, 39 states allow casinos, and we have almost 1,000 of them. Nearly equally divided between Indian and non-Indian casinos. So America is now awash in casinos, and this is having a major impact on the success of individual casinos. And Connecticut's casino business is plummeting at the moment. Casino revenue in the last 6 years is down over 32%. It's down from a peak of $430 million to under $300 million today. And it has been down now for 21 straight months. And the reason is the competition, as well as the weak economy that we've been experiencing. But Maine now has its first 2 casinos. Rhode Island just converted one of its 2 slot parlors into a full-scale casino. Massachusetts is in the process of picking sites for 3 new mega casinos plus a slots parlor.
Are they copying the Connecticut or the Indian casino model? Because that's not the same thing as watching casino and gambling. It's more like become an entertainment center. And maybe in Las Vegas that's the way it was too, but are they copying this model, or are there different models for what a casino is?
I think in Massachusetts what they've done is they've looked at Connecticut and said, look at all this money that the state of Connecticut has made from casinos. We need to do the same thing. The problem is, for Massachusetts, is the dynamics of the industry have changed. The casino revenue is plummeting across the country because of this increasing saturation. So Massachusetts has really missed the boat, and that they're coming in 20 years late. And today, the casino business, as I say, the casino business in Connecticut is in serious trouble. Mm-hmm. And as a result, and this is an ongoing story, as a result, you have to ask, well, what is the state of Connecticut doing because of this faltering casino business? You'd think the state of Connecticut might say, well, the bloom is off the rose here. Mm-hmm. But it's not. Instead, our political leaders have decided that the thing to do is to double down in order to try to make up this faltering casino revenue. They've just approved Keno, which they want to put in some 600 restaurants across the state of Connecticut. I don't know how many of your viewers will be familiar with Keno, but it's essentially electronic bingo. And it's going to be a great thing, because now when you go into a restaurant, you'll not only get the menu, but you'll also have some numbers you can play with. You can gamble throughout your meal. It's it could be a song, I suppose, gamble while you eat. The really sad thing about it is that if your grandparents or your parents and you have your children with you, they're going to want to play. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a great way to introduce your kids to how to gamble for money. Then other legislators have proposed that we begin to put video slot machines in our OTB parlors across Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And then finally, there are a number of our political leaders who believe we should legalize online internet gambling. And if we do that, as one observer commented, it'll be the equivalent of putting a casino in every house, every office, and every dorm room in the state of Connecticut. So this is the progression, and my hope is that education about the downside will stop this further expansion of gambling in the state.
Now, as somebody myself who has lived abroad and has been to casinos in other countries, how does the American culture of casino relate to the culture in other countries, and are they going through the same issue now? Let's have a casino everywhere. And number 2, has the casino brought in tourism to the country or to the state from out of the country, if you know the answer?
From out of the country. Well, I think initially, certainly Las Vegas brings in gamblers from all over the world. I mean, Las Vegas is a destination resort, bar none, and it continues to attract people. But with all of the casino gambling now in Connecticut, in the United States, and with almost 1,000 casinos, people aren't coming from overseas in order to gamble here. I travel a great deal I did for my company, and I've been in many of the biggest casinos across the world, and Europe is a very, very different story. Now China, in terms of Macau, and Singapore are also very, very different stories. But here in the United States, this explosion of gambling has literally turned casino gambling into America's new national pastime. More people today go to casinos in the United States than to professional baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, and you can throw in any other professional sport you're aware of combined. And it has a very, very negative impact and influence, both socially and economically on our country and our society.
So what would you like people to take away once they read the book? I mean, what course of action should they take? Are you asking for a course of action, or just to be knowledgeable about what's going on, or are you just recording the history?
Well, let's take Connecticut as an example. Nobody's going to close the casinos, and nobody's proposing the casinos be closed. Although Congress, as far back as 1999, Congress set up a national commission to study the social and economic costs to the country of this casino explosion. And the commission recommended that there be a moratorium on the building of new casinos across the United States. That recommendation was never followed, and the number of casinos has continued to explode. Most independent economists believe that the cost to benefit ratio of casinos in the United States is greater than 3 to 1. In other words, the cost 3 times the benefits on a long-term basis. We know the social problems, we know the debt, the bankruptcies, the broken families, the crime, and these are all realities. And the question is, where does it stop? I hope in Connecticut that we can repeal Keno. I hope in Connecticut we don't go to video slut parlors across the state of Connecticut. And I hope that in Connecticut we can defeat what is going to be a strong move to legalize internet gambling here.
So you're not against casino per se, you're more for what type of regulation, with the word we hear, regulating the gambling industry?
I think I would say enough is enough. We've got more than enough gambling. Incidentally, one of America's 2 most successful...
So you want limits on it?
I beg your pardon?
You want limits on it?
Yeah. One of America's most successful casino moguls, Sheldon Adelson, who has casinos operates casinos in Las Vegas, in Pennsylvania, in Macau, in Singapore. He is about to launch a multi-million-dollar campaign, lobbying campaign, to try to stop the legalization of internet gambling in the United States, whereas most of the other casinos are in favor because they want to get to a younger audience. But he believes it will be toxic both for the country and for the industry itself.
Well, we've come to the end of the show. It was really educational for me. And if you can sign over one of your...
I've got my own pen here.
You've got your own pen. I'm so happy you brought it.
I would like to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
A great book. I hope a lot of people will read it.
Today is what? December
11.
11, 2013.
Correct.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really enjoyed. It went so fast that I don't know where the time went.
My pleasure.